The Digivolution is up and running. Did you see? Did you hear? Did you know what's coming? A Digi Destiny starts today. Let me hear you say.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 23 of Lost in Translation Mon. I'm May.
And I'm Jay.
This week we watched Doraemon of the Lost Forest
Or Trash Day.
and Clash of the Ultimates, War Greymon versus Metal Garurumon.
Or The Ultimate Clash.
Alright, so on to Obnoxious Synopsis. So the first episode that we're going to be watching this week is called Trash Day in the English version, and in the Japanese version it's Doraemon of the Lost Forest. What do you think is going to happen in this episode?
Oh, those are very, very conflicting titles. One's about a forest and one's about Trash Day. It's possible that a forest, in this case, is colloquial and doesn't actually mean like a traditional forest. Maybe. What's a Doraemon? Okay, no, you don't have to answer that question, obviously, but
No, I'm going to see what jure means.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just
what I'm
getting it up. It's derived from the Japanese word jure, which means age of a tree, though it also is a pun on long life.
right.
So that's a bit of a sort of hint towards what a Doraemon might look like.
It's probably a giant like old oak tree. Which like the great Deku tree from Zelda. But the problem is that makes no sense as to like what Trash Day could possibly be. Unless it's like Puppetmon coming into the forest and like murdering the biggest tree. But I can't see why that would affect the kids in any way. This one's hard. I have no idea what's gonna happen. Um, but I guess if last show taught us anything, is that Puppetmon's probably gonna die in this episode. Because
Right?
if you have four
Yeah.
villains, it may as well kill them all over 8 episodes.
So if he does die in this episode, who do you think will deliver the final blow?
Well, that's a weirdly odd question.
Oh, last episode, the episode before last, we saw that War Greymon delivered the final blow. So
I,
who do you think's going to?
I guess Metal Garurumon would be the obvious choice.
So you don't think there's going to be any new evolutions in this episode?
No, again, we've been over this 3 times at least. If their name isn't in the title, then
But there is a Digimon name in the title.
but that's related to the place that they're going. You wouldn't have ancient Treemon in the forest if it was one of the kids' ones. I could see it being like Lilymon's evolution, but that would be really weird and out of nowhere. And since Puppetmon
Well,
is
she
made
is a plant.
But since Puppetmon's made of wood, like I can also see it being like a whole destruction of the forest thing. Um, yeah, I don't get the sense, especially from the English name Trash Day. Like at least Flower Power was as the least evidence one was still like really obvious. Um, yeah, I think it's probably just a Digimon that exists already. For whatever reason though, I think it's a good one that like Puppetmon's trying to kill. That's just the sense I get. I'm probably wrong because that's not the system that they've shown us, but that's what the titles lead me
So
to
what
believe.
level? So what level do you think Doraemon is?
Uh, Look, the levels are so pointless and meaningless. They fought Shellmon and like a perfect in the same episode.
What do you think like this Digimon will be powerful, or
Yeah, probably. It
do you
gets
think it'll be a baby?
it got named. It's got ancient in the like the definition of it. It's probably not a baby, but
Right.
but yeah, it's probably fairly strong. But then Waymon was fairly strong and he got murdered.
Well, Waymon's, I believe that because there are two. Waymon has two stages technically. There's an adult level and a perfect level Waymon.
So he's a
I think it
whale
just
or
gets
he's
a
a
bit bigger.
whale.
Yeah, it gets a bit bigger, I think. So I'm not sure it's not really said if that Waymon had become the bigger Waymon yet, or if it was still the adult level that we met in the first arc or the second arc.
Did you know that that's super dumb? Because that's super dumb.
It's been described as both a perfect and an adult, so
You really meant to like strap metal on it to make it more
it
obvious.
must be metal Waymon Mon.
Exactly. Is there a Mon?
So what do you think? Yes, it's a monkey.
That sucks.
I think its English name is Mon Mon. I don't think its Japanese name is the same.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. So what do you think this episode will be rated for you?
God, it's coming off the heels of the best episode in the series, so it's going to be like a 5. I'm not sure they can keep that
Right.
up. I have no trust.
So do you think this episode will be about any of the Digidestined or?
Well, if I assume that where Gurumon's going to be, no, Metal Gurumon's going to be focused on then Matt, I guess, which would make sense because he was developing's a strong word, and it was more, uh, not, he was more whining and being awful, but at least they were
Hmm.
showing that he has a character, which they have avoided doing for, I don't know, quite a lot of episodes.
All right. And the second episode that we're going to be watching this week is called, in English, The Ultimate Clash. And in the Japanese version, it's called Clash of the Ultimates, War Greymon versus Metal Garurumon. So this episode is sort of, the episode names is basically the same sort of thing. What do you think?
Okay, well, obviously there's almost no information to go on here. The only information that even exists is Metal Greymon and Wolverine fight each other. I assume that tensions come to a head, and like uh, Matt, no, yeah, essentially challenges for leadership and is a huge whiny baby. And I'm assuming that he loses super hard. I hope so, because he sucks.
Oh, you don't like Matt.
No, I don't. He's whiny and annoying.
So do you think anything else will happen, or do you think it'll just be like 20
Dude,
minutes of them
the
arguing?
titles literally say The Clash, so it's a fight. Also, and then the other title is These Dudes Fight.
Right.
I have no information to go on whatsoever.
So what do you think this episode will rate?
It has so much, it actually has a lot of potential to be really interesting. So I'm gonna hedge it at like a 7,
Right.
but that's it could be awful.
Right. Anything else you want to say about either of these two episodes? Any predictions you want to make?
I predict that Matt's going to continue to be and annoying
Right.
because that track record hasn't been broken yet.
And we have some DigiNews this week, but it's only very short. So Hiroki Hirata is returning as the narrator in Digimon Adventure Tri, and here's a fun fact that I learnt today. As well as being the voice of Leomon and Yamato's dad, Hiroki was also the official dub-over artist voice for Johnny Depp.
Like in all things he was in.
Yes.
So he's us. This is the Japanese voice actor. Oh, yeah.
So he is Japanese Johnny Depp. Anyway, so on to Postmon Pat. So first of all, we have an Anonymon who said, since May brought up seeing Digimon as a scary version of Pokemon, out of curiosity, what's the both of your stances on the whole Pokemon versus Digimon debacle? So I think these two are different things. I don't understand why they have to be competing. It's like competing between a donut or some ice cream. Like both are fantastic choices. That they're not the same choice. That they're still desserts in the same way that Digimon and Pokemon are both anime with games and toys. So I think they're quite different. I mean, I guess they have the Mon thing at the end, but it's just short for monsters. Like Pocket Monsters is, I think the idea was it's like a capsule monsters like Gachapon, and digital monsters are different because, they're digital monsters. So I think I prefer Digimon more because I probably put much more time into Digimon, but I still have played like all the Pokemon games and put like hundreds of hours into each of them. So I love them both, and they've been with me for a very long time, but I think I prefer Digimon just because like the anime is a lot better.
I mean, I think you say it's like liking two different desserts, but I think they're very distinct in that they're both investments. The different franchises demand an investment. Digimon demands you buy the toys. Pokemon demands you buy the video games or the cards or whatever it is at the time. And you can't discount the fact that they're aimed at kids. And to be aimed at kids, they invariably demand a limited resource, which is essentially the amount of complaining that a kid is willing to do to a parent, right? Does that make sense?
Mm.
So they're taxing this like money base. And yeah, you could say that from a perspective of an adult, where you can like them both equally, but that's not what they are. They are franchises aimed at kids. And invariably they force you to take a side. It is impossible to look at something like this and not consider it to be divisive because it is.
So do you have a preference between the two?
Oh, I mean, I think I've made it reasonably clear at this stage that I like Pokemon more. I think it makes more sense. It doesn't treat itself as seriously, which on one hand is frustrating because you want stuff, but then you look at, say, uh, Pokemon, what's it called? Origins. Pokemon Origins is great. It's it's really well done. Um, and uh, I find it more reasonable. Like it knows where it knows where it's going at all times, and it doesn't have so many weird plot holes of like, oh, you're in the internet, oh, it's data. Like it doesn't feel like it's pulling everything out of its ass, I guess.
I think Pokemon does that too. Like I think Pokemon like Origins is great, but Origins was also like an hour and a half instead of, many episodes. And I think Pokemon does have its own plot holes in the anime. And I think the anime is more repetitive that every season seems to be like go to new place, discover new Pokemon, Team Rocket are bad. Oh, they try and steal Pikachu even though there are better Pokemon around. Oh, there's the legendary. Ash makes friends with the legendary. Legendary destroys some things. Ash calms legendary down. Then they go to a new like he fights some people and gets some badges, and then the next season is exactly the same.
I guess I never actually watched that much of it when I was younger. I only really watched halfway through the first season, but I was so invested in the games and everything. And
Yeah, the games are amazing.
I think that Pokemon's evolution is much more comfortable and their character design, where you look at, say, you, how do I put this? You look at Wegurumon doing his weirdness, where he goes from a werewolf to, back down to a regular wolf where you strap metal onto him. It was always much more intuitive and made much more sense that you could just have like small lizard turns into medium-sized lizard turns into big lizard, and it takes much less like narrative stretching to make that make any sense. It didn't require any of this crests and tags thing. You just had your badges, which conferred authority because you were good at what you were doing. Pokemon, despite it being super weird as well, is much more down to earth because it was about taking these fantastical animals and sort of shifting them into society.
Hmm.
Whereas Digimon is like, look at this weirdo, bizarre stuff that's going on. None of it makes sense. We will attempt to make it make sense, but I think in their failure to do so, it weakens the franchise overall in comparison. And also, their games are quite fun. Whereas,
Yeah, the games are quite fun. I mean, there are some really. There's Digimon World 2003, which I played so much of when I was young. It's very similar to Pokemon in the way like you have to beat guys to progress, and also there's like an evil organization you have to defeat, which sort of like the first start of it is like sort of like fight these guys, and then you discover all this conspiracy stuff, and it's like whoa, that's cool, and like yeah. So
also,
the Digimon games are quite good
I
as
think
well.
by and large, there's a very different focus in what the shows are about. Digimon is very clearly about the Digimon themselves.
It's
By
also
and
about the
large,
friendship with the Digimon.
but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying they're both about the friendship, the relationship, but Digimon is much more focused on the Digimon because they are more sentient, they have more personalities, they speak, they have relationships, but in the sense, especially in Digimon, they're forced. Like we were always destined to be friends, whereas in Pokemon, I always felt the relationships were much more earned because they weren't always destined. You had your long arc where Charizard refused to do anything, and then as you earn that trust, it's great. Pikachu in the first episode is shocking the hell out of Ash constantly, has to get rubber gloves, and it feels a lot more earned than Argamon shows up because I've been waiting for you forever, and my destiny is to be your best friend. There was no built relationship. It's just already there without the kids having to try at all. And Pokemon, on the other hand, focuses on the trainers and focuses on their relationships, but both between each other and their Digimon and figuring that out. Um, in a world where they're the primary power, I feel like the kids in Digimon are really passengers. They don't need to be there. If the Digimon were like a team, they would operate the same. The kids contribute nothing except the ability to evolve.
Yeah, which is important because they wouldn't be able
No,
to
but what I'm
evolve
saying is that
otherwise.
if you took out that MacGuffin, that narrative construct, what you would call all, because it's in the script, I think besides occasional problem solving, you could one-to-one switch out the kids for the Digimon and just it would be the same. There'd be mild variations, like obviously the TK being alone with Devimon would have been different, but it wouldn't have been hugely different altogether if you just took the kids out of it entirely and made it a story about their Digimon. Whereas I think that you could not say the same in Pokemon at all because of the interaction of teams and the way that works. And also because that's about
Yep.
in Pokemon it's primarily about competition. That's why the fighting makes so much more sense there because they're designed to compete and it's more variable. The wins I always felt were more earned because you'd pop a balloon and they would fly away, or you would be clever in your use of your abilities, like you have quick attack or thunderbolt or using water in the area, or say Meowth throwing a bucket of water onto Onyx. I always thought that was great. Whereas in Digimon, and I mean, it's really obvious from the reused animations. The way Digimon fights progress is I throw my attack at you, I throw my attack at you, one of us falls down.
Well, that's how the Digivice was.
I understand that,
But it's also
and that was
because
how the
like,
Pokemon game was. So I understand how that comes from a source material, but you can fix that. You can make it much more dynamic and
well,
interesting.
they learn strategy later on.
Well, I haven't seen that, so how can you ask my opinion, including information I don't have?
Okay, so the next one is from Alice Canin Shenbao, and they say one can estimate how much time passed during adventure due to how many hints and estimates we were given in the show. Lots of math goes into this, but long story short, roughly 8.6 years passed in the digital world while the Chosen were in the human world. As for where the Dark Masters were during all this, the adventure novels state that they were sealing away some gods while their henchmen, Devimon, Edamon, Vamdemon, were on chosen killing duty. So thanks for that because I wouldn't have worked out the time, but I just knew that it was several years. So it was basically 8.6 years that the Dark Masters had while the children were in the real world. So I think that's interesting that we actually get a figure for that.
It is, I agree. And I guess I maintain, and it'll come up very soon, that information given in a novel should not be imputed into a show because it is the show's duty to tell you this information and not make you rely on other pieces of media. The same issue comes up in the game, well, did come up, I think it's fixed now, in Destiny, the video game,
Hmm.
where the primary story was on these like written text files you could access on the internet.
Yep. Yeah, apparently they did fix that now.
That's good.
Okay, so another Anonymon says, I understand why in the dub that guns were removed, but did they really have to change important dialogue, like with Matt? Matt's struggle is something that kids could relate to, so why do they think they have to tone down the emotional development? Do they think that American kids are unable to comprehend what's going on? Do you think they're not able to understand the concept of friendship, insecurities, and brotherly relationships? These are not violent issues.
Perhaps the English writers, and I mean, I would prefer if they didn't make all these changes, obviously, and they definitely weaken the show by doing so. But I think it's become obvious that the English writers really want to tone down any darkness in this show, and they want to push it into a much more light-hearted show. And that's probably the basis of it. It's not just taking things out for the sake of making it easier to watch, but more that they consider this a lighthearted franchise, which is why they make all these weird, stupid jokes, remember, that kind of come out of nowhere, and they ruin characters to make them funny and stereotypical because they think that that's what the show is meant to be.
I agree with what Jay said, and I think that I would have appreciated they left in the sort of character development because, I mean, they do leave it in somewhat. Another Anonymon said the European dub had nothing cut or censored, even the music was the same, so the part with the gun seemed scary but not misused. I remember I understood the difference. However, it didn't stop from making Pinocchimon look scary and menacing. For such a few episodes, Pinocchimon is a better character than the previous villains, and Piedmon might be too if he had more screen time. But definitely the two of them are better than the armored ones. Also, Taichi is surprisingly level-headed in these episodes. So I would, like I said in the last anonymous ask, I would have prefer they kept more stuff in. Like sometimes, whenever they make character development, I think they could have left that bit in, but they seem to try and always take it out. And in my opinion, the only times when they should change the script really is when they make references that kids in America wouldn't get. Like in this episode, there's a reference when someone says Sora Mimi, which means Miss Here, and both Mimi and Sora go, huh? Or something like that. So
Yeah.
that was obviously taken out.
And yeah, that's an issue between translation, localization, and what they're doing a lot of the time, which is rewriting the episodes. We've established this so far. It is a huge mystery as to why they've pushed it so far. Just as an aside, you talked about whether or not I'd be interested in ever speaking to a voice actor or asking them any questions. And while the answer to that is no, if I could ever talk to one of the writers of this show, I'd have a lot of questions for them. Because it's such a mystery. There's so many weird changes that were made. But I guess that's why we have the material to make the show.
So the next Nonomon said that Yamato is a loner protagonist, which is done better than most anime because it plays on his insecurities and guilty conscience, since he has moments when he doesn't consider the rest of the group friends and only prioritizes his brother. However, it gets cliche since he and Taichi haven't fought since Fire Island. So this ask got cut off, I think, and so did the last one and the one after that as well, because of Tumblr has like a word limit. So when you're typing in your asks, please make sure if you're not typing anymore, because otherwise I have to interpret what the last few sentences are, and it's hard.
So for the record,
so yeah, like I continue.
So for the record, I thoroughly disagree with this analysis of Matt and his character, and we'll get to that in this episode. But I hate him. I before I felt neutral and nothing because he was nothing, and now as a result of these episodes, I actively hate him, and not in a manner that speaks to a good application of media, but in a way that he is terribly written. His motivations are really stupid, and he's constantly doing things that are counterproductive, not only to everyone else's goals, but to his own. And he falls for everything. He's so dumb. That's my take on it anyway.
Anyway, so the last Anonymon says, I really liked the podcast, and Jay summed up pretty well why Pinocchimon works as a compelling villain. I think some of the future episodes will get a high score from him, hopefully, but episode 43 really deserves the praise. The next episode is a nice conclusion to his character and is a bit sad since he never gets the answer to his question. Also, Jay kind of spoiled himself with his ideas of a Digimon episode since something similar happens to later seasons where the glitch is a major villain.
Oh, the glitch was to facilitate the Kidgimon and the Digimons being the kids. And while I appreciate, I liked the moral conflict. Mostly, I want to see weird art of Agumon with Tai's hair.
I would like to see that as well. I'd like to see all the combinations, really. I mean, we've sort of seen the Mimi Palmon one in one of the episodes, but I'd like to see more. So yeah, you can read the Gmail now and the With the Will ones.
All right. So our first one from With the Will is from Gmail. It's from Edgar, and they said that they agree with. They say they agree with Jay about needing to read a novel to understand the show being rather silly. And this is the exact problem with the Star Wars prequels. And while I understand this is a reference to the extended universe, Star Wars universe, which is not canon anymore, the problem with the Star Wars prequels is not that you had to read books to understand them, but among other reasons, and primarily, is because those movies ruin the rest of the series. I just want to go on a small aside about midichlorians, which distinctly ruin the whole series. Midichlorians are like a microbe or something that you can measure in your blood, and the more of them you have, the more access to the Force you have. This unto itself is not the worst thing ever. It's pretty stupid, because the series does talk about what the Force is, and it should not be accessed through microbes in your blood. But everyone knows there is a Sith Lord in the Senate in episode 1, and they've just told you you can measure how much Force someone has by testing them, and they don't do it. But they've told you you can. So they've ruined their own plot by introducing an element that didn't need to exist and undermining the whole story. There are plenty of problems with the Star Wars prequels, and needing to read the extended universe is not the problem. Those movies are bad. Anyway, so however, as May said, these were made after Adventure. Uh, and they heard that the PSP game does much the same. The prophecy thing could work with Vandemon if he were shown to be more superstitious, um, maybe more religiously minded or fatalistic. Um, as Jay said, the writers just didn't care enough about the idea. If the prophecy said only the eighth child is needed to defeat him, maybe it could work out and still have reasons and excuses as to why he can't or doesn't want to kill them. Maybe he's saving them for the Dark Masters. Although I would say if he's saving them for the Dark Masters, that implies that he loses. The only reason your boss would have to step in and fight the kids is if you don't beat them. And he fights them enough. He fights them twice, I think, like personally. He fights them enough to show that he wants to kill. No, he fights them three times. He wants to kill them. He just never wants to do it when he can. He only wants to fight them the moment he can no longer win.
Too much effort.
Yeah, apparently it would take too much. So, and they say, personally, I think that Myotismon is. They switch between Vandemon and Myotismon. This is like we do in our notes. Is popular with fans because he looks cool compared to Edamon. And I guess I'd agree. Edamon and to Myotismon is a big step. It's a huge step in what your villain looks like. Between Devimon and Myotismon is actually not that big a deal. I think Devimon actually looks cooler, all things considered. It's not as clean a design, but it's also not as like gothic cliche. It was unique. It was like punk devil. And they also think that they think that Wizardmon's death was shocking because not all kids shows did things like that. They I guess didn't have a lot of deaths. I think Dragon Ball Z would
Except
have
for Animals of Farthing Wood. But
what
that
is
thing was death everywhere. Everyone does.
what's Animals of Farthing Wood? What is
It's a
that?
show that was on like ABC like ages ago. It's about animals and they live in Farthing Wood, and then like tractors come along and like start demolishing their park. So they're like, oh, we have to move. So they go to another park, and like it's based on like a book series, but the show was really good. And there were foxes, and like in the first episode, like you meet all the characters and like, oh, this is so and this is my mate. Oh, we're such good friends. And then, like during the adventure, some eat the other members because they're like foxes and birds and rabbits and weasels and a badger and a mole who are like in love with each other. Um, and so they start like different like parts of the group start eating each other, and then like another one dies because of like there are people hunting and like the dogs attack them or something, and then they continue to die throughout the season, and like the original fox have a child like children, and then like one of the fox dies, like goes on an adventure because he's like the lone wolf cool guy,
He's a lone wolf fox.
and then like their daughter falls in love with like the evil fox's son, and
So what
like
you're saying is that this is furry Game of Thrones.
yes, but it was in the 90s. How could you never have like
What?
watched Animals of
I'm
Farthing
not
Wood?
British.
It was on in Australia.
No, it was British.
Yeah, it's British, but it's on in Australia.
But I wasn't British, so I didn't see it.
But oh, so good. And like, oh, there were so many characters. There was like, oh, my
So
favorite was the weasel.
also, I mean, Dragon Ball Z was playing at the time, and people died in that all the time. And then I mean, they always came back, but they died a lot. Um, I don't think death in kid shows is quite that rare, especially death of people who are not main characters. And I know that Wizardmon's positioning made him look like he was kind of a character, but he wasn't. And I think I've gone on long enough to establish that he's a device, not he's a writing device. Um, Furthermore, Edgar goes on to say that the US has a hard time admitting that the world doesn't end at the US border. Digimon got off easy as it was during a time when it could be admitted that anime is from Japan. They give an example that there's something called Code Lyoko, which is a French
You didn't
show.
watch that either?
Never heard of it. It's the first
Oh,
I've ever heard of
what?
it.
Oh, the foreheads in that show were amazing.
It's a French
Like they
show.
all had billboards.
It's a French show set in France with euros and everything. It was still localized as being in the States, and it was never acknowledged that it was in France. It's all in the United States apparently in the localized version. Digimon still straddles the line between keeping the characters Japanese and completely ignoring Japan as a concept. Uh, Devimon gets a participation trophy. Why couldn't Devimon be a good guy? I mean, there's a lot of reasons Demi Devimon couldn't be a good guy. Uh, the reincarnation stick would have been more interesting uh, to atone for his transgressions. And I agree. I think that Demi Devimon coming back. I mean, it doesn't make sense because obviously with virus typing, pretty much, you've locked people into being genetically evil, much like a Dungeons and Dragons sense, where some creatures are just evil. But I also think it'd be really interesting to have uh, an evil appearing character be legitimately helpful, um, or someone who is meant to be evil being helpful to show that there is a change of heart. And I don't really count Poopmon and the mouse because they were converted by the touch of the Digivice kind of, but they were never really evil. They were just kind of annoying. So yeah, on With the Will we got Chuckmon, and they
Wait,
said,
just hang on a second. I've linked you pictures from Code Lyoko. I think it's really important that you know how big these foreheads are.
oh okay, well
Like
let's.
it's not a joke. It's the face.
Oh, this looks really familiar.
Maybe you did watch it then.
No, I've never watched this. Wow, they have huge heads.
No, it's just the forehead. The heads are normal. Like if you
No,
cut
no,
off
but
the
if those are huge heads, if you lowered them down to reduce forehead, then you would get regular heads. Like, wow.
like the only ones that look normal are the ones with fringes.
But even then, wow. Okay, well, back up to to the letter.
Anyway, so on to With the Will.
So Chuckmon says that they were looking forward to hearing what Jay, being I, thought about playing games, and I agree with him 100%. Oh, thank you, Chuckmon. I appreciate that. I agree with me too. Have agreed with me for years. The different stages for perfect and ultimate are confusing, and that's true. And I don't know. Like, the problem is you've used two words that are pretty much the same. Well, like perfect and ultimate both being 100%. You can't go beyond 100%, but they do. Um, and I said that the favorite J-ism right now isn't that no one could anticipate the monkey, but a quote from the previous show, having multiple evolution paths for a Digimon is bonkers. It makes the VPEC games more fun, but the logic doesn't carry well to a more fully developed story world. Although the ambiguity of canon has always been one of the things I claim to love about Digimon, and I get that, it could be fun to look into something and try to work out all the pieces when it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I would prefer it to make a lot of sense, and then to have deeper layers beyond that. Uh, I think the best example is the Harry Potter fandom, where years later you're still getting weird fan theories where like the Harry Potter world makes total sense. And yeah, it's weird because of magic and stuff, but it has its internal logic and it sticks to it really hard, and I really respect it for that. Uh, and you're still pulling out weird bits and pieces about people's motivations, why they act the way they do, how they're portrayed in movies versus the books and everything. And I think that going the layers deeper beyond just how does this work, when the world's already explained to you how that worked, so you can work out everything else, is more interesting. Um, and Chalkmon's final statement is that they like the Wind Guardians. I imagine primarily of the five Digimon family Gangolies.
The original one, the original fields. There were five of them, but there are more now.
How can you have more than just like the dudes in the water, the dudes in the air, the demons, the robots, and the dudes on land or in
Well,
forests?
I think they added ones like Virus Busters, which is basically like good guys, and Dark Area, which was basically just bad guys. They also made one later on called Jungle Troopers, and that sort of combined nature spirits and wind guardians.
Jungle Troopers is
There's,
just forest whatevers.
and then there's another one that's called Dragon's Roar, which has like the dragony ones, like Agumon and Aedramon and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like there are more, but I'm like I was talking about like the original five fields that were in the first five pendulums, and the pendulum zero, which has the Virus Buster, came out like I think towards the end of Adventure, like the same month that the last episode came out. So I'm just judging by the first five fields.
Right. We'll take your word for it. This is going to be the Gangolies to me. Um, so FX May, speaking of, I believe, my story idea, was that they expected me to come up with something dark and scary, but that I completely exceeded their expectations and made a Call of Cthulhu level nightmare fuel. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Uh, I guess you could have a lot of like Lovecraftian elements in a world gone completely mad. Uh, the multiple evolution paths are the most fun thing about Digimon. And apparently, I see this as confusing personally, but then we've talked about this just before. That's a very Pokemon mindset that I have, which is start to finish, it's a line, and then
Well, Eevee doesn't have a line.
well you have, but he has a start to finish. He has he. It's not like he could turn into Gyarados as well, right? That's like there's a small like evolution family, and that's all it is. Also, he's fairly unique in that like he's a special case. Most of them are straight lines. Some of them have one branch,
What about the ones that
like
evolve? But some evolve like where they've caught.
Yeah, like Poliwhirl has a weird branch where he turns into Politoed, um, and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But those are anomalies. That's not the system, right? You couldn't turn your Charmander into a Venusaur if you tried. It's impossible. But by Digimon
Yeah,
logic,
because they're
you
different.
can. And I guess the question is,
No, they have to be pretty similar still.
when you die, what do you reincarnate as? Do you reincarnate as the thing you were born as, or a different thing that could have turned into you?
Yeah, that one.
Okay, well, yeah. That's my point, is that multiple evolution paths in Digimon makes way less sense because different babies can become the same thing. Whereas I believe in Pokemon it's very different, which is the same baby, it's always the same baby, and then they can turn into different stuff later. So their evolution can be variable, but in this one, you can revert to a different child. It's very confusing. And the final thing they say is that there are some bits of it that are touched on in other seasons, namely Tamers and Savers, and maybe Cross Wars, or Xeros Wars, I like to call it. Uh,
Hmm.
and they don't want to talk about that, about which parts, not to give it away, but also that they think that I will like X Evolution. And is
That's the one you saw
is
and you hated it.
X Evolution the one where it's the kids combining, or is that?
No, no, X Evolution's the one that we saw, the movie.
Oh, I don't.
The
Well,
one that you hated.
what is an X Evolution? I don't know.
That's just the movie name. It's about the X antibodies.
Oh, that movie was terrible. That movie was so bad. The problem, okay, I'm gonna boil my problems with it down to the X antibodies. Yes, you've explained to me what those are. You know what didn't? The movie. And the problem is that the movie's core contention was that you knew what these things were. And so the question I have for you is, and you have to look it up. So I assume X antibodies are never ever explained in the show anywhere.
No, I think it's explained in the movie, but we just didn't pay
No,
attention.
I paid attention to that movie. They always talked about them and they never explained what they were. I might have been really bored, but I watched it because you told me to.
Well, why don't we watch it and like have a
I
podcast
don't want to
episode and
watch
we
it
can
again.
invite on and we can
I
invite
have to
Mitch on
watch it
because
again.
he's a literary genius.
What? What? When did that happen?
Have like a special. I just thought we should have Mitch and Matt on a podcast where we watch X Evolution
Matt
because
would...
they're both literary geniuses. We'd have to censor everything Matt says.
Yeah, just beep him constantly.
So yeah,
This is
basically for
Matt.
the listeners, yeah.
Say hi, Matt. Beep 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 beep. Thanks, Matt. You can go now.
So yeah, for the listeners, these are two friends. Like they're two of my friends that I met in uni. They're like my best friends, and
You
they
see,
they have a very bad vocabulary.
you see, if we hadn't said that, and later on we posted on Tumblr who they were, we couldn't expect listeners of the next show to figure out who Matt and Mitch were. It's very important that you include the information that you expect people to know in your own piece of media.
Yep.
Anyway, I think that's the end of the letters.
If you want to get in contact with us, you can email us at lostintranslationmon@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook. We have a discussion thread on With the Will. You can comment on our episodes on SoundCloud, or you can message us on SoundCloud. And we'd really appreciate it if you reviewed us on iTunes or Stitcher.
I would personally very
All
much
right.
appreciate it.
Episode 44. When straight away in the dub, it does something to slightly annoy me, which is that it's a flashback. Matt's talking about what happened, and he refers to the underwater chase and Mega Seedramon as we had to escape from Mega Seedramon and his Digis.
Yeah, I caught that as well. Just they're the Digis.
Like they like to shorten things and like give special like wacky names to things. I'm like, with his Digis. And then when they're talking about the flashback and like, oh, where's Matt? In the flashback, Matt says, "Come on, let's go," like to Gabumon. So it's sort of implying that he didn't want to be by himself, which he later says that he wants to be by himself. Like it seems that he's saying, "Come on, Gabumon, let's go," instead of Gabumon only following him because he's a dog and he's very loyal.
Yeah, the English's treatment of Matt going away by himself is awful, really bad.
It's like he's having a tantrum.
He is having, you know what? Let's be honest. He was always having a tantrum. Even in Japanese, it was Tantrum City. But was it a
It's more tantrum in English.
was it a justifiable tantrum? In English, no. And we'll get to that. In which Matt is the most annoying, frustrating, garbage character in the show. If you like Matt, then we have a problem. Not just you.
I like Matt.
You shouldn't.
He's not my favorite though. I
Is
prefer
he-
Mimi
is
in the
he-
Japanese version.
Is he your least favorite? Because he should be. Could
I
you
don't
like
hate him. I
anyone
don't
less
think-
than Matt?
Kari in the English version. Gardamon
Oh.
in the English version.
Oh, I don't count the Digimon. Kari is a fair choice. That is fair. I would say that she
She basically
hasn't,
comes into the show and is basically, I'm perfect.
but she's not actively
Like,
trash.
that's her character.
To be fair to Kari, she's never actively terrible. She's neutral and does nothing. No,
Yeah.
you disagree?
In the English version, I just find her a bit annoying. Like she basically like seems very like too mature age.
I agree with you. I feel like she's
Yeah, I
taking
get
this
it.
all way too well.
Yeah, like in the Japanese version, she's quieter. She seems a bit more nervous about everything. The English version, she's like very, I don't know, okay with everything. Like, oh, I'm in a digital world now. Okay, cool.
Well, that was kind of how she always was, and it was always really dumb. She's just like Tai shows up with Koromon. It's like, hey, look, that's Koromon. Hey, check that shit out. And it's like, but what? Why are you just totally fine with this? No one else can remember. Also, this is the episode where they say it again, and I'm like, oh, right. The big, and it's the next episode, but still, I'm gonna say it now. The invasion of the real world was 4 years ago. That is not
Yeah.
enough time to completely forget about the Godzilla and the giant parrot fighting outside your window. That's not enough time. I thought it was like 10 years. That would make sense for it to be 10 years,
They're
but
all
that's what it felt,
10, yeah.
that's what it felt like.
Well, 4 years when you're like that age is a long time.
But it was Godzilla.
I think they all probably told their parents, and the parents said, "Oh, you were just having a bad dream," and they probably just after a while started believing it, just saying, "Oh, it was a bad dream."
I don't
Like if
thi-
you're that age and you're impressionable,
Well, Kari obviously never got the sense that it was a bad dream. Kari always remembered and just didn't say anything.
oh yeah, you're Koraman. I think that's more in the English version though.
No, they were both
Like
like,
she refers to like
there was no surprise.
yeah, but in the English version she straight up says, "I've been to the digital world before," even though she hasn't.
I can't remember that part, but you're probably
It
right.
was in Home Away from Home. And she's like, "Oh yes, I've been to the digital world before," or something along those lines. Anyway, so the children are looking for Yamato and are worried that he was taken by Puppetmon. Joe says that he saw him leave and that he just didn't stop him because he just thought he was going to use the toilet, which is the same in both versions. So the children talk about how they should have known something was wrong, and they're like, "Oh, but he did seem weird," and then he couldn't get Gabumon to evolve. And then Hikari hears the voice again, and then Tai says, "Oh, maybe you misheard, or it was Matt or something." And since in the Japanese version, Sora and Mimi, is like Miss here, Sora and Mimi look and say, because they thought that he said their name. But he didn't. But that's a pun, and that was removed, and I forgot what they put in it, but it was probably something very small because I didn't realize it. Anyway, so we then see Doraemon's talking to Puppetmon about how while Puppetmon is dealing with all the other children, he should take Yamato because he's on his own. So then we have Yamato thinking about how his brother doesn't need him anymore and how he's grown up on his own and how everyone has grown stronger, and he thinks that he hasn't changed at all in comparison to everyone else.
I think you missed something important here, which is
What's
that,
up?
yes, Puppetmon looks at Matt and says, he's alone, I should kill him right now. And then, so this is the exact situation Vamdemon would have been in, which is, kids are alone, I should kill them right now. But instead of saying, hey, Devil Ball, go fix the problem in some unknowable way that you couldn't possibly handle being tiny, a minion approaches Puppetmon and says, don't do anything, I will handle this. It will be very entertaining. So it gives a perfectly good reason that Puppetmon did not go do this personally. He was told that someone else will do it in a manner that will entertain him, which is his primary goal, to be entertained.
Yeah, because otherwise he would have just killed him on his own.
I really appreciate that the show told us exactly why he didn't go take advantage of this, where it constantly failed to do that before.
Yeah, so I always thought that you'd prefer the Dark Masters arc because the Dark Masters are given motives to their actions. Like it's explained why they do things or why they're in separate areas. So why they're not attacking the children straight away.
Yeah, like Metal Digimon was territorial, so he wanted to take care of it by himself. Puppetmon thinks it's a game, so they're his to play with, and he won't be cool with the like sharing. That's really interesting, and I love that it didn't have to, obviously. It didn't have to tell us any of this stuff because obviously the show writers think it's good enough to just say I'm not going to kill them now because I'm not gonna because it's in the script, but they did this time. They did tell us exactly why they're not going in guns blazing, and I really appreciate that. But then Matt's whining a lot.
Yeah. He does that for 2 episodes straight, so I hope you enjoyed it, I guess.
I didn't.
So Doraemon starts talking to Matt, and just a little fun fact, Cherrymon, which is the English name of Doraemon, is voiced by the English story editor and writer Jeff Nimoy, which
cool.
Prodigious has interviewed in one of their episodes, and it was really good.
I feel like
interesting. I think he does a few other voices as well. I think he might do Tentamon.
I feel like he was doing like a Marlon Brando thing. He was trying to put on a little voice, and he was like, "I'm a tree," which is like, "You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding." Just doing
in the Prodigious episode where they interviewed him, he said that voice completely just ruined his throat.
It really would. It sounds like it hurt.
Like how apparently Monokuma ruined Brian Beacock's voice.
Oh god, it would too. You're constantly screaming about
he's not
despair.
Naturally that high. Yeah. Monokuma!
Oh, that's awful. Let's never do that.
So would Teddy's voice actor from Persona, because it's the same sort of deal, I guess.
I don't think so. Teddy's not so. He's excitable, but he's not screaming all the time. He's just like, hey, the ladies. He's much more subdued, which is weird because he's he's an excitable character.
Yeah, Danganronpa's great. So is Persona.
This voice is unbearable.
Oh god, Green and Barrett. Anyway, so then Izzy notices that the Digivice doesn't detect other Digivices in this forest. So I guess it's kind of explained why they don't find Matt. So it's really good. They're not just saying, "Oh, we can't find Matt." No idea why.
That was another.
They could have used a Digivice.
That was another element where they threw it in. It was throwaway 5 seconds, and I go, "Thank you for addressing this thing that totally breaks any concept of like, losing somebody." Like, and this retroactively makes sense how they couldn't find TK, but the fact that they're discussing it now means they never tried. Even Matt was just like, I'm not even going to try to use my Digivice to find him. I'm just going to be upset that I don't know where he is.
So then Mimi seems to be having a breakdown. Like she's saying everyone will die. Everyone's going to die. And then she says, because all 8 of us should be together and fight, we're all going to die together. So she's having a breakdown in the Japanese version. But in the English version, she's saying about how her calves are going to look like a bodybuilder's. And that sort of explains why both Palamon and Sora are sort of looking at her with slight worry. And I guess they're taking some bit of saying, oh, Mimi, is there anything else you care about besides the way you look? Even though she's actually having like a severe breakdown. And I don't know why they had to take this out, but I would really like to know why. Because this, gives her actual character development. She doesn't want people to be fighting. She just had like deaths of her friends. Like Waymon, was actually her friend. So, and she's 10. She doesn't want to do this.
I agree, and the worst thing they could have done is revert them 30 episodes to when they were complaining about walking.
Yeah.
Did you miss the kids walking through forests and complaining about having to walk? Because I didn't.
I hope you did. Yep, here you go. Have it in the English version. But so in the Japanese version, no one, I think, is complaining about walking anymore. Like, I think they're done complaining. They're used to walking. They should. I hope they're wearing their Fitbits because they've probably got lots of steps in. But
That's not
yeah.
a data reference at all.
How are Fitbits dated? They're cool now.
It will be later. When people are listening to this in 2030.
No one's going to listen to it in 2030.
I'll listen
They'll
to this
be
in 2030
watching it
when I'm dead.
in their brains. You might be dead in 2030.
I don't know, you
You'll be
could
dead in
be.
15 years.
I could be.
Nah.
I'll be
Nah.
37. Who knows?
You'll be like a lawyer, judge, Judy, barrister or something.
Maybe.
Anyway, so Puppetmon orders 3 Garbamon to attack the children, and then Mimi's just standing while everyone else is running away. She catches the poo, and then she says, I'm not scared of this stupid thing. Just leave us alone already. And everyone's completely shocked.
Oh,
So
such
then
a good
in the
moment.
English version, she actually says something that's kind of brave and surprising from the English version. She says, I won't budge. Let them do a running for the change. And then this is completely ruined by the fact that she runs and said, yeah, what was I thinking? I touched that thing. So she reverts back to, not wanting to do it. But it's still, she's basically having a breakdown and is acting out of character and doesn't want anyone else to fight or die.
It's like the Japanese just goes, this is character development. She has stopped being like all about shopping or like, oh, I stole this stuff from my dad, but I don't know what it does. And now she'll just get in there, grab the poop out of the air, doesn't matter, totally pragmatic, throw it. In English, they've gone, well, we've got the animation of her catching it and she doesn't look disgusted, so we have to put it in there. But then let's just back it up a little bit so she's still a comedy character. She's still a girl after all. Right?
Mm.
That's what they're typing there on the little typewriters. Like, but then she says, "Ew, poop." Why did I touch the poop?
But it's not actually poop, it's sludge.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Remember that.
And it's
So
a favorite
this episode
color.
really flips between. Maybe she thought it was like hair mousse. I think that she actually calls it hair mousse at one point.
Ew.
So this episode flips between the characters a lot. So it flips back to Doraemon and Yamato, and he's sort of like Doraemon's kind of playing to his weaknesses and saying you can help, like I can help you improve. Look into the water and see the rival that you must defeat. And he sees Taichi, and Matt seems a lot more reluctant to do anything. Like it's kind of like, why should I trust you? You're probably evil. You look evil. Gabumon says you're evil. I don't trust you.
That's such a
So then
reasonable
again,
standpoint.
Yeah, it flips back to the Garbamon who are chasing the children, and all the adult levels start to attack. Garbamon dodge the attack, and one comes to attack Mimi. Togemon evolves to Lilymon, destroys one with her flower cannon, and of course, because like Greymon has to have the moment he evolves and destroys the other one. So the cat missile blows everything up. Then it flips back to Matt and Cherrymon, and an insert song called Seven plays in the background when Doraemon's saying you have to fight Taichi. He's the one who's stopping you from growing. Your friends aren't real. And so Seven's obviously an insert song in the Japanese version, and they just play generic music in the English version. So then Gabumon tells Yamato to do what's right, and that he will follow him and fight for him. Even if it means fighting the others, I will do it for you. So Yamato's crest reacts to the friendship that he has with his Digimon. And instead of the music that we usually have, which is Braveheart, we have like the music that when something is slightly worrying is happening, like something slightly bad's happening.
I find
But in the
this
English we have the normal Digivolution music.
I find this situation really weird because, especially in English, he's just been convinced by this tree, and it didn't take much convincing, by the way, but that A, these people he's been traveling with for probably almost a year are not his friends, again, despite them being together for a year. And in English, he says friendship doesn't exist. You know in your heart that friendship is just a word, and that true friendship doesn't exist. You're alone. And this concept, if Matt agrees with it, and he agrees with it to the extent that he's going to go murder his friend. He's just going to go murder Ty over a 3-minute conversation with the tree. So that's how convincing this was. And he believes it in his heart that friendship doesn't exist. So now that he's not in a dangerous fight next to his friends, now Gabumon can evolve. That he's accepted that friendship doesn't exist.
No, but he sort of feels the loyalness from Gabumon. So I think it's also Gabumon's friendship and love and how loyal he is reacting for Yamato.
Speaking of which, Gabumon's reaction to this is one of the most, but it's in the script things I've ever seen, which is the tree is talking to Matt, and Gabumon is constantly going, "He's evil. What are you doing? This is really stupid. Fighting your friends is the dumbest thing you could ever do. Why are you even considering this?" And it cuts away, it cuts back, and Gabumon just goes, "If you think that murdering Tai is the right thing to do, I will just do it. Because that's what I do. Anything you say, no matter
Yep.
how stupid it is." That's not a good
Well,
friend.
that's how devoted
That's a
Gabumon
moron.
is. I know, but that's just but it's how devoted he is to Matt. Like that's the crest, and that's why the big all-knowing force selected that Digimon to go with Matt. Like he
But
matched the personality with the crest and with the Digimon.
a good friend in this situation is not one who just goes along with you because you think that murdering your friend of a year's travel is a good idea. A good friend is the one that stops you from being manipulated and encourages you that violence is not necessarily the answer to your character development. Like, there's such an obvious flaw in this plan of convincing Matt, where Matt goes, "Okay, I, in my best case scenario, I have killed Ty. He is dead now. How do I improve as a person as a result of this? Does everyone love me because I walked in and just murdered him? This is going to work out
See,
really well."
I would have liked to see Metalgurumon come out with a dark, like black colored metal instead of blue
I thought the
to be a
exact same
somewhat
thing.
corrupted version, because it's the same sort of way that it wasn't real courage with Greymon evolving to Skull Greymon. This is a different kind of friendship. So I would have really appreciated because a dark colored Metal Garurumon does exist.
Like, I'm 100% with you on this. I had the exact same like thought process, and they even bring it up, I believe, in the next episode. And
Yeah, in the next episode they say,
Ty thinks about Skull Greymon and how like he forced it and he overdid it and he went about courage the wrong way. So
yeah,
a wrong evolution took place. And I think that like this would have been a really good opportunity to have, let's even pretend that that Matt's motivation here is a good one, and it's not, but let's pretend it is. And he thinks that he needs to go that his idea of friendship needs to evolve. So he he makes Gabumon continues to resist, and I think that's probably good. The fact that Gabumon just agrees is dumb, but if Gabumon continues to exist, Matt is convinced, and he's got this like new idea of like anti-friendship, where he can only rely on Gabumon, but at the same time abandoning all his other friends. Then Gabumon becomes
yeah.
like an evolution, if you will, and then the evil version is like sinister And only then does he begin to agree. Only then is he like, yes, I will do this for you because this is what you want, and without questioning it. That would make a lot more sense because we know that Dark Evolutions have different motivations than,
Yeah, but I think it'd be slightly more in control than Skull Greymon was. Like
yeah,
Skull Greymon was just it would attack Tide. This would be like a basically like the same Metal Garurumon we see in this episode and the next episode where he's just attacking Agumon, but basically with a different skin paint and is basically friendship doesn't exist. The two of us are the only real people who really exist. We're the only ones who matter,
I
sort of
think
thing.
you could go so far as like redesigning it, or like taking Garurumon and sticking metal on him so he's like standing up, and then you could have Matt have this moment where he's a real moment where he's convinced, where not when he was talked to by the tree, but he sees this new evolution and he goes, now I must now understand what real friendship is because this is Gardemont's like real evolution. So he feels
Yeah,
like he's been presented with evidence beyond a lake. And the lake evidence, I'm not really
beyond the tree.
I don't really understand the lake evidence because I think we've established so far that every Digimon's attacks are their abilities and that they're all fairly well described,
Yep.
which implies that Treemon's ability and attack is make image in water.
I don't know.
Like, it's called
I
Cherry Bomb, but if Kokaida's breath can be a metal wolf claw, then Cherry Bomb can be make image in water.
I just thought it was like a magic lake that Cherrymon had control over.
But how does he know what Tai looks like? He's never seen Tai
Or
before.
maybe it's also Yamato thinking that Tai is the enemy, and it's the lake is sort of saying this is the enemy, even though it's just what Yamato thinks. Like he thinks that in his brain that Tai's the enemy, but he's not going to say Tai's the enemy. It just sort of it's his subconscious that's saying that, and maybe that's why he saw Tai in the lake.
Magic digital lake.
I don't know. Digimon digital lakes. The digital lakes are the champions.
No, that was awful. Um,
You're awful.
ow. Uh,
It's okay. You're not awful.
so I'm gonna say I was meant to say this right at the beginning, but in fairness to this episode, I'm gonna say a lot of this didn't make sense, or maybe I missed details. But in my both defense and to plead guilty, I was making pancakes at the time of watching this.
Oh, thanks for sharing.
Like,
I was probably asleep, but I would have liked pancakes.
there's one left.
It's mine now.
Okay,
Okay,
I
so
don't eat for breakfast.
brr,
I
I
can
have
make them
waffles for breakfast
again.
anyway.
I can
Okay,
make
good
them on
point.
Sunday.
You are forgiven. Anyway,
Awesome.
so I agree with the fact that the Gabumon and Yamato are activating the crest after they accepted that there's no such thing as friendship and him having a normal evolution. Like I disagree with that. I want it to be rewritten and I want evil Metal Garurumon.
And like, it doesn't take a lot of changes, and you get the same story that just makes more sense.
Yeah, like it's corrupted evolution, and it's it's explained in the next episode, so it would be fine just to slot it in there. So I'm rewriting it right now. The episode we watched, he was dark. He was dark Metal
And then like
Garurumon.
when Gavmon comes down, he can be like, "That was an awful experience," and then like talk to Matt one on one, and it would be great. But instead, he's just like, "I'm gonna agree with you because that's what I do because I have no free will.
Yep.
You're my friend, and thus I always agree with you, no matter how absolutely stupid you're being."
Yeah. So then he goes off to fight Tai, and then Doraemon's warning Pinocchimon that he may lose and that he should be careful because the children have heart and it's something that you don't have. So Pinocchimon gets mad and kills Doraemon, and it's the same scene in the English version except that Cherrymon says, "Oh, the horror!"
Well, in English, it doesn't focus on the idea of them having heart, with air quotes. It just says
Yeah,
like he says you may lose, and then Pinocchimon kind of or Puppetmon just goes like, "Does that mean I'm missing something?" And then like he infers the whole thing, which I think is
yeah,
a slightly weaker exchange, and it makes no sense why they had to make that change. The shift away from having heart being like I guess a soul or a will to win that the Dark Masters don't necessarily have, and saying the children are special in some way versus they'll win because they're friends, just because you might lose. Just keep it in mind, you might lose, and Predicamon killing him basically for that.
Mm.
If he hadn't said, if he hadn't inferred that he might be missing something, then that scene would have been much weaker. Otherwise, it's just
Yep.
slightly different.
Like, it would just be killing him for no reason. He killed him because he was, he thought he was speaking out of line.
Pretty
Anyway,
much.
so the last Garbamon jumps out of the can and is a pink blob, pretends to surrender, doesn't actually. He sucks, like, almost sucks in Hikari with this, like, the garbage can void.
There's a
Then
black
Metal
hole in
Garurumon
this
kills.
garbage can. A black
Yep,
hole.
basically. And then Metal Garurumon kills him. Everyone's running over happily. Agumon runs over to thank Metal Garurumon, and Metal Garurumon attacks Agumon, telling him to fight. Pinocchimon is watching, and he says, "This better be entertaining." Also, I'm going to point out something right now. There were only 3 episodes, animation evolutions in this episode. Togemon to Lilymon, Gabumon to Metal Garurumon, Greymon to Metal Greymon. So, and that's probably a very small amount compared to other episodes.
I mean, not really.
Yes?
There's like one in the there's an average of one per episode for the first like 10 episodes.
And there's only 1 in the next episode.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's not that
That's at
big
the
a
very
deal.
start and never again.
Yeah.
They skipped a lot of the evolutions. So, what did you think of this episode as someone who was new to Digimon?
So the fight with the garbage mons was completely pointless. It was just there to keep them busy while so that they couldn't look for Matt. But I guess your problem with that is that there was no reason to. You'd already established why they couldn't find him. If he showed up on the GPS locators, but you were distracted by the fight, okay. But you've already told us you can't find him, so giving us a reason that you can't in the fight is pointless beyond obviously having a fight. And Pinocchio not getting involved in this one was much harder to justify because he's right there and very powerful, and he's run off by getting pooped on. So really, I think it weakened the episode, and the episode couldn't really stand if he weakened much more because the primary element of it is Matt going through his like friendship problem, and he's sitting on the shore and he's like, I've not changed. Everyone else has changed so much, but I've stayed the same. Everyone's developing, I'm not. So what he's saying is, I'm written badly, and I'm upset about how badly written I am. That he's sitting down and he's thinking about how badly written he is. And then he goes, well, I'm going to fix that by leaving the group and being alone, being vulnerable to the 3 ridiculous bad guys that can beat us when we're all together. This seems like the way to go. I'm going to take my whining now and my character development over, say, the fate of 2 worlds because he's so important. So then he's approached by someone he knows is evil. And in Japanese, you can always excuse them because the digital analyzer, or whatever it's called, never really says that they're evil. The English one straight up tells you. The English one is like, I think in this one said that he's one of the best reasons for termites existing. Like, it's pretty rough.
Mm.
So, this is a similar situation to Demi Devimon and TK, actually, where a very clearly evil Digimon comes up to one of these kids and starts talking to them and starts convincing them of this stuff, and their partners, who are destined to be their best friends, are advising them, don't listen to him. This is really bad. He's so evil. Stop doing this. And the kid doesn't care and just keeps listening and is convinced super easily to do something that is totally detrimental to his well-being. And in this case, that's kill one of his friends. And Gabumon just goes, okay.
So how did this episode measure up to what you thought it would be about in Obnoxious Synopsis?
So I remember Obnoxious Synopsis not really knowing what it was. So the conflicting titles were very interesting here because the Old Forest discussion is obviously this tree, and that's very core to the episode. It's very important to what actually progresses, whereas Garbage Day, uh, is just totally misleading. The only reason it's called that is because of the Garbage Mon, and
Yep.
they have no presence in the episode whatsoever. They forward nothing. They are not part of the plot. If you had replaced them with Lampmon, if you'd replaced them with rocks that rolled towards the kids, if you'd replaced him with Puppetmon and he just fought them, it would have been exactly the same. In fact, I think if Puppetmon had fought them as a group and they were like, well, we can't win because there's not enough of us, that would have furthered the episode a lot more. But no, it was just time wasting. So there's a giant old oak tree, like the Deku tree from Zelda. Well, I was perfectly accurate on that. The trash
Hmm.
day, Puppetmon comes into a forest and murders the tree. I was totally wrong on that. The Puppetmon will die. Really wrong. I'm surprised how wrong I was, honestly. I thought Puppetmon would be dead by now. But, well, maybe the poop killed him. Who knows? That'd be a Matt-centric
Hmm.
episode. I was right. And that Doraemon is a good Digimon. And I was wrong. Doraemon is not. 5 out of 10. No, this is a 4. It's worse than I
Really?
thought it would be.
I thought it was better than like I thought it was quite like it wasn't as good as playing games, but I think I still would have given like a 7 or something.
Not at all. Like, let's put this episode is separate into two halves. First, there is a completely pointless fight which progresses nothing and is actively damaging to the show. Well, not actively, it's total neutrality, if not time wasting, which could have been a decent. If you needed a fight, and you do, then you could have had a fight that advanced the plot and made it clear that they need Matt, but they didn't. They just won anyway. And then Matt's story, it's just him whining and he's whining about stuff that is so not interesting and that is so minor compared to the fate of like the universe or the internet as it were. And then he has this conversation with this tree, and he shouldn't be convinced. The key here is that this could be well written in two different ways, and one is that the tree is just way more convincing than he is, and the other one, which would have made it a good episode, is what we come up with. You get an evil evolution, you get Matt being legitimately convinced by evidence, but I thought it was just so weak. And I don't think that Matt's struggle is interesting, and I think that he's actually I on my next spoiler on my next episode in I believe yeah, in episode 45, I have a paragraph in my notes that just says Matt is stupid. And it just says that over and over and over again because
Wow.
Matt's really stupid and I hate him. And you should not make me hate the kids. That the job of the show is to make you like them. And by and large, most of their motivations make sense. Even when they're being kind of unreasonable, you can kind of get it. But I feel like he's being so actively damaging to all his friends, to himself, to Gabumon, and to every loyalty he should have. He's demolishing, and he's putting himself in danger. So even if he's leaving for selfish reasons, he's probably going to die. He will never know how close he was to just being instantly murdered.
Because Puppetmon would have killed him.
Yeah, Papa Mom, if Doraemon wasn't there, he would have been killed.
And I don't think Gabumon would have been able to evolve still. It was that realization that, like, sort of, I guess, made Gabumon evolve, and I don't think he might have had that at that time. He would have died, and so would have Gabumon.
But
And
even if he could evolve, we know that Puppetmon's stronger.
yeah,
Matt is terrible. And I never really liked him because he didn't have much going on besides his like obsession with TK. But removed from his obsession for TK, he becomes destructive and not in a well-written way. Like, I feel like the show is saying this is justified, and I don't agree. And I think the fan reaction we're getting is that they like this, that they think this is interesting. We got a letter that said that this is a well-developed issue, and I do not agree. I feel like this is terrible, and I think that is most evidenced by the way it concludes. The way it concludes is so weak. And we'll get there. Basically, I think Matt's dumb, and I hate him.
so what differences did you notice, and do you think they were justified?
I still noticed Treeman's voice. That wasn't a big deal.
Like Mimi's
Yeah.
lines?
So the kids walking and complaining, like because they couldn't speak about other stuff, really made them seem like the thing about the Japanese one where they don't care about that stuff anymore and they're still going, it makes them sound like heroes, which I really like. Whereas this one, that's like, oh, they're just kids again, and yeah, they back off Mimi's development, and I don't like that. I think in English they push harder on Doraemon saying that friendship doesn't even exist, like as a concept. Like in your heart, you understand that friendship isn't real. In Japanese, I think it's like he's your rival, and your friendship isn't necessarily real with him. But I think in English, like friendship simply doesn't exist, and that was a much strong like that's a much stupider concept to convince a kid of in like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And Gabumon's plan, I think Gabumon in English, when he's leaving with Matt on his back, is still like, I'm still gonna prove to you that friendship matters though.
Yeah, he's still saying, I'm going to show you that Cherrymon is wrong.
But he's saying that, and his plan to prove to Matt that friendship matters is going to kill Agumon.
Yeah, so I think they might have added that to make him seem more reluctant, even though it's, completely contradicted by something that happens like 3 minutes later.
Yeah, it's real bad.
So the beginning of this episode is where we left off. The children are telling Yamato to stop, and Joe says, Yamato, in the Japanese version, Yamato, remember that we're all friends. In the English version, they changed this to him complaining about the fighting giving him a headache. It's like, why?
It really took like nothing at all to completely snap Matt and turn him into this annoying like Sasuke bad guy who they're like, "We're your friends." He's like, "Heh, we were never friends. I don't have friends. I'm dark and brooding." Like,
I'm so dark. I'm so bad.
it took a 15-minute conversation with a tree, right?
Oh, it was less than 15 minutes. Like, the episode in itself was 20 minutes. It would have been about 5.
I know, but like,
He's not, like, he was easily convinced.
let's assume that's for the sake of for the sake of his character not being literally the weakest person in fiction. Let's assume that some time took place between camera cuts, so that the conversation was like 5 times longer than the 3 minutes we thought it was. Um, so I believe it's where Metal Garurumon,
Yeah.
shoots eye lasers at Agumon. They go, "We're gonna fight now," and he doesn't explain why. If he was, even if he was like, "Oh, we're rivals and I have to beat you and everything," you'd think he would explain to everybody, "Okay, we have to fight now for this reason." And I know you don't understand that, but I think it's important. So don't hold back and like do this whole like Japanese honor thing. And also, this makes more sense because I think I said this before already, but like, what's his ultimate aim here? He comes in, he beats the crap out of Tai, and then everyone just takes it. Everyone's okay. No one else evolves to help. Like, he's just being evil. So eventually Wargreymon evolves, and they go into the air to fight, and then Matt and Tai just have a fist fight, just punching each other in the face. And where in Japanese there's like actual animation of them hitting each other and knocking them to the ground. In English, it's like a punch out to the camera. They've zoomed way in, and they have like a punch out of the frame, and then they cut to the other person falling down. So you never see a punch land, and they cut it way down because they couldn't take it out completely. They're getting bruises and stuff, and they have important dialogue, but they really, really censor out the fight.
Yeah, so also before they start fighting, there's a bit where Taichi's just turning away, just saying, I don't want to fight. And he's sort of handling this quite well. He's just saying, look, we don't have time to fight. We have stuff we've got to do. We've got to save both worlds. We've got to fight the Dark Masters. I'm not interested in this, whatever's going on. So he just sort of turns away.
It's really
weird.
In
the English version, he's just saying, now you're just starting to make me mad at this point. So I was like, could they make him angrier, I guess?
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. It's super weird. Like, Taichi doesn't seem like a really pragmatic guy. He always kind of seemed like, he had not a temper so much, but he didn't have the longest fuse. And now he's very down to earth. Like, why would you even want to fight? This is super dumb. Let's just go do the thing we need to do.
Even Agumon says, oh, wow, Taichi's really matured. And he walks off too. So another thing I noticed is that when Taichi and Yamato are fighting, in the English version, TK says, Matt, I'm going to tell Mum that you're fighting. And I don't remember TK saying anything. Like, was this part even in the Japanese version? Did they just add a clip from somewhere else?
I don't remember at all. Again,
Like,
pancakes.
yeah. So it's just saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna tell mum that you're fighting, but it's a lot more serious than that. I think they're trying to play this bit off for laughs or something. So then Tailmon just says, oh, they'll tire themselves out and then we'll be friends again. Just we have to be patient.
That's super
But then,
irresponsible. Shouldn't
yeah.
they
So
step
then
in?
in the English version, Godemon seems to care less.
Unfortunately, they're Mega Digimon, and there's nothing any of us can do about it.
Best thing is for them to duke it out. I just hate fighting, and we can't let our friends destroy themselves. It's a dog-eat-dog world, isn't it?
They're not dogs.
The deal is this. We just sit and watch them take care of business.
Oh, yeah? I don't have to like it. Gomamon, get a grip. The last thing we need is any more fighting around here.
So it's really
like
weird
Gomamon.
that like the kids punching each other is way more entertaining than like the two metal super beasts firing like modern laser weaponry at each other in the air.
Well, it's focusing on the children because they're more important. Like they're the characters.
But shouldn't the mech battle be really exciting as a fight? It's
Man, they've seen
so
monsters fight
boring.
before.
They're just floating opposite each other, shooting stuff. And then they hit in the middle of the air and they explode and nothing happens. So they just keep firing weapons and nothing is accomplished. And it's really boring. At least it was kind of dynamic when Wargreymon was fighting Metal Seadramon and he'd fly by and actually punch him once in a while. But this is just attack. Oh, I throw my attack at you. Oh, I throw my attack at you.
Well, it's not meant to be the focus. The focus is the emotions behind it. Like, and they're not like Metal Garurumon doesn't actually want to fight. So that's not like this isn't the focus. The focus is Taichi Yamato because Yamato is the one is this episode centered on.
Oh, he wants to
So-
fight. Like, what Metal Gurumon clearly wants to. Which one did
Yeah,
you
but
say?
only because Matt wants to.
But,
What?
yeah, did you say Wargreymon or Metal Gurumon? I keep getting confused.
Metal Garurumon and Wargreymon don't really want to fight each other.
I mean, obviously Metal does. He wasn't ordered to shoot eye lasers, then threaten next time it won't miss to a champion Digimon, adult, not whatever, a baby, no rookie. Yeah, rookie, right? Algamon was a rookie.
Yeah, a child or rookie.
Yeah, so he's threatening a child with ultimate eye lasers. Like, that's not cool. No matter how much you don't want to fight, you're threatening to just murder a child. Okay. Yeah.
So Nokiomon is laughing and watching, and in the Japanese version, he's saying, "Oh, they're going to end up killing each other." But in the English version, he just says, "Oh, they're going to end up hating each other." It's a bit different, really.
It is very different. One of them is a result that makes sense why he would let this go on and not have just killed Matt. And the other one is like, but they already do. They already do hate each other.
Yeah. Well, they don't hate each other. They're just fighting at the moment.
Well-
So Mimi runs off crying because she wants the fighting to end, and it seemed like she's having a bit of a breakdown again, which is fair enough. Like she doesn't want any more fighting, and she doesn't want any more death. So this is taken as more of a comedic part, and she says, oh, "I'm just going to go over here and stare at the flowers until everyone starts to get along."
Mimi's emotional development is just trauma.
But it's fine. It's fair enough. Like she's had enough.
It is. So Kari wanders off and starts talking to voices. And
Yep.
so there's like this shining stuff in the air, and I believe it's Gomamon and Gardamon show up, and they're like, who is she talking to?
It's Izzy and Gardamon, and they think
Oh,
that
they're
she's
the
just gone
same.
crazy.
And they're like, what's going on? And then they all start to glow. And then Kari becomes Jesus.
So I'd like to step in here and just explain
Please
something.
do.
In the Cross Wars manga and the Digimon Adventure novel, it explains that this light's name is homeostasis, and it's responsible for governing the digital world.
That's a cool ass name.
Yeah, I looked that up because I wasn't quite sure if it was ever explained, and it's apparently not explained until, quite recently.
Media, you
Yeah, I'm
have
glad
to
that they finally
explain
decided-
stuff.
I mean, I guess it was what they showed in this episode is that whatever is taking control of Kari is what chose them to be the chosen children.
Yeah.
So yeah, everyone's taken in by the light. Metal Garurumon and Wargreymon become Koromon and Tsunomon again, and they're taken to a city with Greymon and Paramon. And Tai says, "Is it possible that we're home?" So it's not really explained that this is heightened Buteros or Hikari ga Oka in the Japanese version. But I guess in the English version, they decided to say, "Hey, we've just got to make sure that the kids know," which
But
I
this-
guess is fine. It's fair enough.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna say, like, is this home? They don't live there anymore. But yeah, the real world, I guess.
Yeah, they're talking about the real world. So Hikari sounds the same, but Kari has her voice is more mature. I think it's the same voice actor still, but it's definitely like it's less of an 8-year-old girl voice and more of a mature woman voice.
That's better, actually. I appreciate the change because keeping the voice the same implies that it's really creepy, whereas
Yeah.
being possessed by like an older woman who can explain stuff to you is more of a, I guess, a motherly thing, just in a different body. And I think that this being a positive, good force shouldn't be creepy.
So Talmon says that it's not Hikari who's talking, but in the English version, Gardomon says Kari has had too much catnip. I don't know why they had to say that, but I guess they wanted to. And then Ty's saying, "Why'd you have to take Kari? Why couldn't you just take Joe instead?" And that was obviously in the English version.
Get
I think
totally
he's just
wrecked.
sort of saying, he's just saying, "Why Hikari? Why not any of us?" Which is, that's more fair enough. He's not singling out that he wants to sacrifice Joe to these light gods.
No,
So she explains.
always sacrifice
she-
Joe.
So she explains that it's because she tried to, and that no one else could hear them. And it's only until Hikari came to the digital world that she was able to actually communicate with one of them. So I guess that's her being the crest of light, magic, she's perfect thing going on. And then it's shown that the lights that are selecting the children are actually scanning the data, and this is choosing them. This is what made them the digi-eggs. They got all the information, and then they made digi-eggs and crests that were suited for them. So then the children are shown what their digi-eggs, the digivices and the crests look like, and then the portal to the other world is there, and the gate. And then they sort of explain the Skullmon evolution and about how the wrong type of the crest can corrupt, and that corrupts the evolution. So then the Dark Masters found out about what was going on here and sent Gardramon and Mechanorimon to attack them, and Patamon attacks the holograms and everyone runs away. So then Piedmon shows up and steals the crests. And then we see young Jedi, who's apparently a really attractive Jedi, I guess, and then something is planted in his back. Now, this something, I thought it was something that comes up in another season called a dark spore. So then I asked around to see if this was a dark spore, and it's not really said what it is, but the common theory is that this is what caused Jedi to be an old man. And it's sort of like a curse, and he wouldn't be good at fighting the Dark Masters anymore because he becomes this old man that probably can't fight anymore without pain. So another theory that I read was on Analyzing Adventure, and this was sent to me by Adventure Hearts on Twitter, and it explains about why Jedi seems to know so little about everything, and how he didn't know that they could get to the real world, even though where he's working right now has the gate to the real world. And it's because this spore sort of not only just made him old, it also made his brain go, and he started forgetting things, and he lost his memories.
But he was really good at programming terrible screensavers.
Yeah, but apparently they lost all his memories about this or something. I mean, I don't think it's ever actually explained. Apparently in one of the CD dramas, Koshiro asks him what happened, and Jedi says, "I don't know."
It's really helpful. I can't believe how often we have to say it lately, but wow, it really needs to explain itself when it introduces a concept. It's not even hard. It's so easy to be and this is what that did, or to imply it or do something. Yeah, you didn't even notice in your first run through.
This black. Yeah, in the first run through, I noticed it this time because I was just watching. I was like, "What was that?" So I had to sort of pause, and I said, "It looks kind of like a dark spore, but smoother." So then I, did some investigating, asked on the With the Will forums, asked on Twitter, and I got the answer of nobody knows, but this is a theory, and that's basically what we got.
Because I was going to ask you, because obviously I don't know what it is either, and it's so weird because it focuses on it. It clearly makes it look important. I can't believe it would never, ever get to it what it was.
Maybe it will in Try, because I would like to know.
There's no way it's going to come up in Try. What, 20 years later? Oh, remember that thing? Remember that little black thing they put in Jedi's back? It was plot crucial.
Try's 6 years after, though. It's set in 2005.
I mean, 20 years after, it was published. It's...
Oh, okay, yeah.
Remember that series we put out 20 years ago? This is not only a follow-up to that, but you have to remember the 1 second of framing in episode 45. And if you remember
I just want
that,
to know.
if you remember that 1 second in episode 45, that was never explained and never told you what it was, plot crucial.
I mean, I like analyzing adventures theory. Like I think I'm just going to go with that one that it like made him super old and like made him lose his memory and like explains why he's so essentially useless in
Do you know?
adventure. Like he always says, "Oh, I don't know." Oh, I guess I just found out that there's an eighth child, even though he would have known that.
You know what the problem
We
with that
saw that there
is?
were Kari had, yeah.
Because that doesn't matter. We already have a really good explanation as to how he got so old. Tons of years have gone past. Time went by.
Yeah, but he's not. But
Four.
dude, like whatever he is, do they actually naturally age?
Well, he appears to be
He's not
human.
a human.
Oh, he says that, yeah, but
Yeah, but he's not a human, but he's not a Digimon. And he says that in every piece of media he
What?
shows up. He says it in Anno Tamer. He's like, I'm not a human, but I'm not a Digimon. So
what
whatever he
if
is, do they actually age?
what if the black thing made him like do one of those evil digivolutions into an old man?
Yeah.
But like
Dark War
maybe he does age.
person,
Maybe he does. Maybe it's
Genimon.
unique because he's not human or Digimon. So Digimon don't age, but everything else does. Everything else
Digimon
except
age.
Digimon. No, but they evolve. They don't
They
really.
turn into Gigimon and Babamon. No,
What?
all Digimon become Gigimon and Babamon.
Really? They all become the
Yeah.
same ones? Digimon and Puppetmon and every evil Digimon and every good one become Grandpa or Grandmamon.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Is that a yes they do or I have no idea?
I think they might have said that all Digimon do become Digimon and Babamon,
That's so
but I
dumb.
can't remember. I know that they're perfect level Digimon,
So
or they just
That's-
become an egg.
assuming he ages, and it would make a lot of sense that he does, because he's not a Digimon and he's allowed to age. He might just age really slowly, like an elf, because 4 years go by in the real world, which translates into something crazy in the digital world.
Well, we do see Jedi in another season, which is set after this season, and he looks different. He's not older, but I guess we'll find out when we see him again.
I guess so.
But it sort of makes things very confusing. So I guess that's why I think it's more of a curse than an actual aging. Anyway, so we see that Talmon's egg is dropped because the egg is attacked by Mechanorimon. Like they're like fighting and trying to get the eggs back before Mechanorimon got him on hold it.
Speaking of Mechanorimon,
Yeah.
they clearly have flesh inside, like because of the eye.
Yep.
But Genai climbs on top of one, breaks open its dome, then climbs inside and begins to control it. Is
Yep.
he controlling it by like squeezing its liver? There
Yep.
shouldn't be controls inside.
He's
It's
squeezing
flesh in
Like
armor.
its nerves, I guess, or
That's
something.
so gross. So yeah, he snatches all the eggs and tags and stuff.
Yeah. So years pass and the eggs hatch, and the babies are jumping around with the Digivices and waiting, and they evolve into their next stage, and they're still waiting. And then then they say, and one day they finally came, and then Koromon does this adorable smile, and it's so cute. He's like, ah! And then there's a flashback to when he first meets Tai, and it's
So-
really cute.
When the eggs are in this laboratory, in which they were created, I guess, by Genai and his fellow cultists, they have the tag and the Digivice plugged into them. Because that's how eggs work. So anyway, they get stolen. Well, they are about to get stolen by Paimon. He takes them with Mechanorimon, the suit, and flies away. First of all, he drops the Gatomon egg, and I want to address that because how did that egg not get destroyed when it landed?
Because it's not a real egg. It's not a human egg. Like, not a human egg. It's not a...
Human eggs also don't break when you drop them, actually.
Yeah, no, maybe it is a human egg.
Gross. But it's an egg. You can break them.
Well, maybe you can't break digi-eggs. They're different.
Maybe. And also, he has the tags. How did Devimon get the tags?
Okay, so remember that ask we got a while ago, and it said something along the lines of, it makes no sense how Devimon got the tags considering where they were.
It makes no sense.
And considering Hikari's, I guess Mayoda's mom might have picked up the tag because that's where she fell or something. But yeah, so this is relating to that ask we got
No.
episodes ago, and I was like, I can't remember.
No, the tag did not. I don't think the tag fell with Gardemont's egg because all the tags were separate.
Oh, I thought they were attached to the.
No, they were initially, and then they were all detached. So all the eggs only had their digivices attached. That's why when they fit, that's why when they were left wherever they were, they still had their digivices with them, but not the tags.
I guess they just were given to Devimon or something, except for
By
Hikari's,
who?
which was given to.
Ganai? Is Ganai
Um,
actually super evil?
well, we don't know what that black spore did to him.
Oh, maybe. Maybe that's Devimon's Digi-Egg.
Yep, maybe. So, anyway, so Hikari is back to normal. Yamato apologizes and says that they have different paths and we have to separate for now. Mimi also wants to go alone, and then Joe stays with her. So the group split off.
And
And
Matt's
in the
calmed
dub,
down.
no, he doesn't calm down. He wants to be on his own because he has a lot of learning and growing to do of his own.
He's not murdering Tai anymore, is what I mean.
Yeah. So
He's
I guess he learnt a lot from the whatever happened with the homeostasis.
He's okay. He goes,
Homeostasis.
well, I know why we're chosen now, so at least I have meaning in life, I guess.
Yeah,
But
so that's why he probably calms down.
yeah, it
Maybe he just had a black gear in him.
that I would have accepted that so much more, and like it
So
would have been really interesting if Black Gears worked on people.
yeah, well, we don't know if they don't.
That's true. They shouldn't.
It was never tested. So then Gardamon in the dub says that they're destined to be together again as they are the Digi-destined.
This is the stupidest thing
Wow.
ever. Why would they ever split up the party? Never split the party. In
Well, I guess they did.
in Dungeons and Dragons and Digimon, never split the party. Here's the
But
deal.
there are, 9 episodes left?
Here's the deal. You fought all of the 4 Dark Masters individually, right? And every time, even as a group of 8, you all lost. You all got punked. And only recently, as a full team of 8 people, you beat one of them. Splitting up now seems like a terrible idea that will get you all killed. It feels so weird that the kids have no sense of like self they're not looking after themselves at all.
Self-preservation?
That's the one. That's exactly it. Thank you. None. They've none at all. They're just walking into danger and being like, "This
It's in the script.
It's in the script. I gotta do it. I'm gonna go out and be alone because I don't know.
I gotta.
Because I'd be much happier if when Puppetmon saw me, he could just kill me." I guess as someone who's new to Digimon, this episode's really confusing because guess what? Homeostasis is not really explained very well. So much so that you didn't know what it was. And
Well, I knew that you were going to ask more about it. I was fine with accepting. It was just what chose the children. But I guess I thought that you might want to know a bit more than that. And you'd say, who is this? Do we know this person? What are they? So I tried to get more information.
What are this? This question's really interesting because, okay, first of all, I like that this wasn't actually what it was advertised to be, which is a big fight between Garurumon and Metal Greymon, because I think I would have found that super boring. The fact that they cut that off really quickly benefits the episode significantly.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Then they do their big info dump, which raises way more questions than it actually answers. Because chosen children in the context of prophecies does not need to be literally hand chosen. They could just be kids from a prophecy.
They were chosen by the light, though, Jay.
Yeah, I know, but that's not relevant. So again, that begs more questions than it answers. Of like, did you pick them literally because they were looking at dinosaurs?
Yes.
Or because they embody friendship so good that when having a 3-minute conversation, they'll turn and kill their friends. Like, amazing,
Definitely.
right? Good decisions being made. The Genai cult makes no sense, and apparently will never, because you're never told whether he's not human or Digimon. What is he? He's an alien, I guess. So that's confusing. The Dark Master's showing up before everything's confusing, again, because I didn't know the novels, and I shouldn't be expected to. However, one thing that is improved by me not knowing Digimon, and like on a base level, if I didn't have this conversation with you and I just watched this independently, the slipping the black sphere into Genai's back is such an interesting detail. I wouldn't know it never got paid off, though. As someone who's new to Digimon, that's really cool. It never gets
Well,
paid
maybe
off,
it's
though,
not
so
something
it
that's important.
sucks.
like, as well as it never been explained, we're never really told that, oh, this is particularly what this thing does. Like, Jedi just doesn't know.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm saying is that like they introduce it's so focused and it's such a weird specific thing, right? Because that exact motion could have been a knife, right? If you could get in
Mhm.
positions to there, he should have used a sword because he has one.
Like, Piedmon has daggers. Piedmon could have killed
Yeah,
Jedi, which would have probably done a lot of
it im-
things that Piedmon would want to do.
it implies that that black sphere being put into Genai is so much more important than him dying. It actually does something significantly more sinister, which has so many implications and is never an issue and is just never anything. So it would have been really cool, but it actually really sucks.
So, how did this episode compare to what you thought during Obnoxious Synopsis?
The only information I have is Metal Gurumon and Will fighting, which is true. I thought tensions would grow. I was wrong. Matt challenges for leadership. I was wrong. But he's a huge whiny baby, and I was right. He doesn't lose though. Matt continues to be annoying and potential to be interesting. So, Matt continued to be annoying, and I still hate him. He does not improve. Even when he calms down, he's like, but I'm still gonna go be alone, like a moron. This was a big info dump episode, and I'm not sure it was necessary. Like, it didn't actually advance the kids in any way.
Well, it stopped the fighting and it reminded them that they are the chosen children, that they have to do this.
I know, but it didn't give them any knowledge that they
Except for
needed.
Mimi, who still doesn't want to do this.
It didn't give them any knowledge that they needed. It didn't point them in a direction that they needed to go. It told them the information they already knew again. The same could have been accomplished by TK being like, guys, we're the chosen children. It's super important.
And also, I'll tell Mum that you're fighting.
Yeah, like TK interfering would have been the same, if not better for character development. This was, although I will respect the budget of this episode where they did a lot more stuff that they needed to because they could have just stuck with a really boring fight with the two Digimon forever. I'm so glad they cut that off early, but still, it was painful. This was, I think, better than I expected. Oh, I called it 7 out of 10. I'm going to stick to that. I don't know why I would have called it 7, though, given the
Yeah, you
premise.
said think it has potential for you would give it 7 out of 10.
Well,
But then you said could be awful.
I'm going to give it that 7. It wasn't awful. Maybe 7 is generous, but I'll give it a generous 7 because
Yeah.
there was stuff that happened, and I'll be honest with you, I can't say that about a majority of episodes.
So basically, Digimon. Stuff happened.
No, but most of the time stuff doesn't happen. Princess Karaoke, nothing happened.
Well, in the novel, that's when Togemon evolves. And we've been through this. I told you that they fixed it by making Togemon evolve instead of just Greymon evolve again, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. It would have been much better. Except that, like, her eventual evolution is the second best episode of the series.
Yep, it would have still been the best because Lilymon is great.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what differences did you notice, and do you think that they were justified?
Well, I did write that Matt is stupid for a whole paragraph. So, there's a really great bit where Matt, right at the beginning of the fight in English, like he's come in and he's shot eye lasers at Agumon, and then Ty says something like, Matt, you're being an asshole. And Matt goes, Ty, mind your own business. How can he mind his own business when Matt wants to kill him? Why would
Yeah,
Matt...
this is literally his own business.
And then Matt's like, you guys can take care of yourselves. Because they go, what, do you want to be leader? And he goes, no, you guys can take care of yourselves. But why would he come back if he thinks that they should take care of themselves? Why would he even bother? Yeah, Werewolf Metal Gurumon has... When his turn is so lame, when it's just like, why are you fighting me? Well, I must. I could
But I gotta.
I could explain it to you, but I just gotta. They cut away all the punching. Like the punching was there. It didn't not exist. It was still obvious. They just made it slightly less violent, which is annoying. Holy the next episode name. And then yeah, that was the big ones I noticed. I guess
So-
Kari's voice when she's
Yeah.
different. I actually like the English one slightly better because I think you should differentiate it.
Yeah, it's definitely differentiated.
Yeah.
what episode do you think was better? Like the second one?
The second one's way better because
Yeah,
the first
I
one,
agree with you on that.
you know what? The second one stops the terrible storyline from the first one, and I'll always appreciate it for that.
So do you think it bumps up the first one by stopping
It
the
does not.
storyline? Oh, it's worth a shot. So there were Digimon introduced in this episode. There were quite a few, so I'll go through them slowly. What do you think about Cherrymon?
It's a tree. It's okay. It's just a Deku tree with a mustache.
Garbagemon?
Oh, it's terrible. It's a pink Oscar the Grouch
It's rubbish.
sitting in a black hole.
Absolutely rubbish.
Yeah,
Oscar the Grouch much better.
it's trash.
What about Gardremon?
Is that one of the robots?
That was the orangey brown one.
It's cool. It's sweet. It's a sweet, like, Terminator robot.
He evolves into Andromon.
Okay, that makes sense. I thought Mechanorimon would actually. They're much more
I
similar.
think they both might in the Digimon Pendulum 5, but I don't have the 5. It's the one I'm looking for.
Mechanorimon's design, by the way, is very cool. I like its
Yeah, I like
long, weird
Mechanorimon.
arms. I like the flesh under the things going on. Much more related to Andromon than the other one is. It's very cool.
He's sort of also a bit Doctor Who-like for some, like an enemy that you expect to see in Doctor Who, like sort of with that fleshy, like the things inside the Daleks.
Yeah, exactly.
Davros or Savros or Tavros or whatever his name was.
Sure, close enough.
Oh, Vriska, gotta fight Doctor Who, Vriska.
What?
I called him Tavros.
He's made it sound like Rick and Morty.
Yeah,
Oh, Rick.
you gotta fight them.
Ah, you gotta kill the chosen children. Ah, the children, Marty. You gotta kill them, Marty. So yeah, that's all of that. Genai's design is hot.
Oh yes, can we please talk about young Genai, please? Like this is a really important moment.
I'm not gonna have any further conversation about this.
Oh, it's like he's obviously meant to be like. I think even TK is like, wow.
Even Tinker's like, I
Genai.
turned for him.
Yeah, like, oh wow, young Genai though, like he
Fanning his little 8-year-old face at this 30-year-old man.
Genai senpai.
Notice
Anyway,
me, senpai. Notice me. All right, everybody, join us for the next episode of Gangster Edamon's Comeback Tour.
or the counterattack of Metal Edamon.
That's the coolest thing ever. It's just cool. It's just the return of Frieza, where he's Metal Frieza. That's the coolest. And Ogamon's honor.
Or O Wind, O Light, Saberleomon.
So it sounds like we're getting into like a weird boss rush, where it's like all the old villains come back. That's kind of cool.
Let's go back to my theory about the Digimon Pendulum and this arc sort of somewhat advertising them a little bit. So Metal Edamon and Saberleomon are both the ultimates in the other Digimon Pendulum, the first one, Nature Spirits. So that means all 5 of the original Digimon Pendulums have a character in this season. So we have Deep Savers, which is Metal Siegemon. We have Nightmare Soldiers, which is Piedmon. We have Wind Guardians, which is Puppetmon. And we have Machinegimon, who is Metal Empire. So those are the 4 that we had already. And now we have the first one, which is Nature Spirits. So that sort of further gives evidence to my theory that this arc is just buy the toys, kids.
That's what this whole show is.
But no, Metal Edamon and Saberleomon. But I didn't want to say that earlier because I didn't want to spoil that they come back. And I guess we know that we're assuming that these characters are going to be in the next 2 episodes because they're in the title.
Yeah, probably. You see pictures of them and you're like, who are they?
Yeah.
That's Saberleomon. Okay, cool. Go to the next plot of the episode in which we fight mounds of dirt with eyes and then floating cauliflower.
So I guess we're going to have to talk about that more in Obnoxious Synopsis when we record that.
We will. All that floating cauliflower.
Anyway, so the show notes are linked in the description, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.